you want to be in the video. Hey, my name's Maba. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Hey guys, it's Story. Welcome back. It feels like it's been forever since I've sat down and done a video, so I'm super excited to do one today. I've been taking a little bit of a break, I guess, from YouTube, just not, pressuring myself to meet deadlines, that sort of thing. And I've actually been having a lot of fun on TikTok. If you want to follow me over there, it's at Storybook. I'm always active on Instagram too, in case you miss my face, I don't know. But yeah, I've just been chilling, not stressing too much about YouTube, just posting whenever I feel like it. It's a new yearly thing I'm trying out, but I did ask everyone on Instagram what video they wanted to see next, and everyone said a recent reads video. I realize I'm really bad at doing these in general, and I need to be better at them. So this is my first one of the year. I'm gonna update you with what I read towards the end of last year up until now. I know that would seem like a lot of books, but it really hasn't been that many books. There's one book in particular that has really stunted my reading for this year so far, which I'll get into. I just finished it not that long ago, so it literally took me the very end of last year, all of January and February, the first week of March to read this book. It's 500 pages and it was not enjoyable at all. I hated having to read this book. I wanted to DNF it, but I just felt like I needed to finish it out. It was a series, a duology that I just wanted to finish. But anyways, yeah, if there's anything you want to see in particular, be sure to follow me on my bookish Instagram. It's at Storybook as well, so that you can let me know what you want to see. I'll probably do a book haul next, not a huge one, because I really try to not spend too much money on books. As you can see, my books are overflowing. Before I talk way too much, let's just go ahead and get into the books I read recently, starting with the book that I read at the end of last year, and that was First Frost by Sarah Addison Allen. Normally I would go over to one side of the screen so that you can see the book, but my dog is over here and she's gonna show her face every now and then. It's gonna be really distracting, so example A. So I'll just put the book over here for now. This is the second book to Garden Spells. I talk about this author all the time on my channel, so I'm not going to go too in depth, but she is really good at writing magical realism. It's very I don't want to say realistic magical realism, because that's the point, is that it's not realistic, but it's always set in a small southern town. You always are following a family and other people within this small southern town, and it's really enjoyable. They always give me that super comforting, homey type of feeling with just a sprinkle of magical realism. You're following all sorts of characters of different ages, and yeah, this was the sequel to Garden Spells, so we are following the same characters but 10 years in the future. So we follow the 5-year-old as a teenager, so she's 15 now, and she also has a little cousin. I think the cousin's 5 years old now or something like that, from the other sister. But yeah, I didn't enjoy this as much as the first one. I did like seeing the characters 10 years in advance, but I just found the story to be a bit underwhelming. I didn't feel as connected to the characters. But the new books I read from Sarah Addison Allen have all been really good. When I read, not new books, because she doesn't write new books anymore, but books I haven't read with new characters, I love every book. So I think just reading her standalone books are really where it's at. But yeah, you're just following this small family in North Carolina that is a witch family, or they have a magical garden. But yeah, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, so usually I give her books 5 stars. I'm really getting into magical realism. You'll see here in a minute. So the next book I read was the first book I read this year, and it was The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. So I actually read this as a part of a book club podcast I listen to every now and then. It's called the Redheads Book Club. It's a group of 4 girls that are friends in New York, and they're just really funny, honestly, to listen to. They're super relatable. They all read different genres, and I read every genre, so I always can relate to each one in different ways. But yeah, they read this book, and this book has been on my TBR for forever. It's a very well-loved, very hyped up romance book. Unfortunately, it's overhyped in my opinion. I gave this 2.5 stars. I would give the first half 0 stars and the second half 4 stars. So really it should settle at a 2, but yeah, I settled at 2.5 for some reason. For the first half, the girl just complained so much. She's just a big complainer, gets very old very quickly. I personally can't stand when characters just complain. Like I just don't want to read a book about people complaining, because you get that in real life all the time, right? Everyone's complaining about something all the time. So I don't know. I don't like that, specifically when that happens in books. I also felt like the main character and the love interest just treated each other really badly, and then they kind of forgot about it and then just like fell in love. So it's definitely a play on hate to love, and hate to love is my favorite romance trope personally, or my favorite trope of all time, but I like it to be done a specific way. I don't know, it was just very hard for me to get past, you know, this guy literally took her luggage and hid it from her for days, and then she found it, and then to get back at him, she cut off all his hair while he was sleeping. It's just like, how do you get past that? And he just, like, the way he talked to her was really horrible. He just treated her really, really badly, and then they kind of just like fell deep in love after that, and everything else was forgotten about. And so I just couldn't really get past it. And besides that, the characters and the plot and everything else about the book was just super, super boring. I just didn't enjoy this in any way, really. I wrote that it's super predictable, but I did enjoy the romance more towards the end because the two kind of changed for the better, so it did like round it out a bit, but I still did enjoy it up until that point. First half is boring, second half felt pointless, all of it was predictable. Most likely won't read the next book, but if I did, it would be solely for the Jonah character, just because of how much his character evolved, but I still didn't like him before his evolution, and I just don't know what they'll even do for the next book. So I just don't feel like, I don't know, maybe if I just need a quick audiobook and I don't really care what I'm listening to, because that happens quite a bit, I'll pick up the next book. But I truly just don't see myself doing that, because I don't know, it just 2.5 stars. Usually I will not continue a book. If something's 3 stars, I'll think about it. So maybe that's why, because it's close to a 3-star. But yeah, man, this book is so overhyped. It's like known as one of like the best romance books, I guess, out there. Or I shouldn't say that, because not everyone thinks that, obviously. But this one's not worth it. Let me tell you, it's pretty bad. Next is another magical realism book, and that is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows. Is it Sorrows? The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. I know I'm saying it that way, and it's because this book was introduced to me by Haley in Bookland, who is a Canadian, so she says sorrows, but we would say sorrows. We're the ones that sound dumb anyway, so it's fine. Our lazy tongue and all. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this to fans of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, anyone who's a fan of Sarah Addison Allen books, or magical realism in general, or even fans of the Netflix show Midnight Mass. So I feel very strongly about this, because I feel like this book is a mixture of all of these. It resembles The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue the most. I will say, if you love Addie LaRue because of like historical fiction, then you'll like this book. Because of the lyrical, magical writing, you'll like this book. I will say though, this is obviously magical realism. I guess you could say Addie LaRue is magical realism, but yeah, this book is definitely not as long as Addie LaRue. I personally don't like Addie LaRue, but I absolutely love this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I've always wanted to read it for the longest time. It's been on my TBR for so long. But yeah, I really wanted to just listen to a quick audiobook, but I wanted it to be magical realism, maybe something that wasn't Sarah Addison Allen, since that's like the only magical realism I really read. I'm trying to like really delve myself more into it, because I've really loved the genre so far. I definitely want to give more adults a shot. I know I say that all the time and I just don't do it, but I have a couple A.S. King books that I want to read this year, if I get to them. But yeah, this book specifically just has really beautiful, touching, lyrical writing. I actually had the opposite instance for this book. Usually it takes me so long to read the first half of a book. That's just how I am. I am a second half reader. I will annihilate the second half of a book in 1 or 2 days, but it could take me like a week to read the first half. I'm just like, in general, a person that doesn't take transitions well, I guess. I've noticed, like, once I'm entering a new world, like exiting the old one of a book, like it's just very hard for me to get into it. But then once I'm in it, I'm like, okay, I'm here, let's go. But this was actually the opposite. I love the first half of this book, love it, 5 out of 5 stars. I would say the second half is more of like 3 stars, maybe even lower. So we basically learn the entire history of Ava's family before we get to her. So Ava Lavender was born with wings. That's why it is magical realism. That's why it's, you know, a little weird, a little different, a little unique. And I did like Ava as a character, but I absolutely loved following her grandma and that family, and even her great grandma and grandpa. So it starts with her great grandma and grandpa. They have 4 kids. They came from from France, so they're all French American, and you just follow the different families and the little specks of magical realism within each person, and they go to different places within the US, and then they have children, and then you just follow this like family lineage. Just so much fun and unique and such beautiful writing, and I just loved following this family for some reason. Like, it really inspired me to write a little bit myself as well, which it takes a lot for a book to do that. So that was amazing. But then once we get to Ava Lavender's life, it definitely dials it down a little bit, this family lineage, and then you get to Ava and it just kind of stops and you focus on her, obviously. The characters around her and where the story went to be a bit boring and definitely unexpected. Like, this book is just not predictable in any sense, and you think it would be. Like, knowing the book going into it, you just think this book is going to be so predictable, and it definitely isn't. This was definitely a unique read that will always stay with me. Like, I know the feeling I had while I was reading it, and it'll just like always stay there, and I definitely want to read more books like this. I would say it's similar to the feeling you get when reading Addie LaRue, except I didn't like Addie LaRue. If Addie LaRue was like 200 pages shorter, I probably would have liked it, but it's way too long, and I didn't like any of the characters and all of that, which I won't get into. I felt like once we got to Ava Lavender, the story was just really jumpy and kind of for no reason, where everything flowed beautifully before her. And it also goes into religion, of course, because she essentially looks like an angel. So people will kind of treat her like an angel, or they'll treat her like an outcast. So it's very like extreme opposites and a lot of things going on which are out of her control. Not a big chunk of it is religion. It's just the play on the angel thing, really. So obviously I would recommend it to magical realism fans since it is magical realism, but this is definitely a hate-or-love book. I've noticed that people absolutely despise this book or they really, really love it. There's no really in between. I would say if you aren't a fan of magical realism or lyrical writing in general, I would not recommend this. But if you do want a book to take you into a very specific magical, beautiful world where there's super interesting characters and there is just something super, unique about it, and it has that magical realism twist, then you're really gonna like this. I want more book recs like this, so if you have any, please give them to me down below. I spent way too much time on that book, so sorry, but the next book I'm gonna try not to spend too much time on because honestly, it doesn't deserve that much time, and that is When Night Breaks by Janella Angelis. I don't even know where to start with this book, honestly. I hate saying this because I love the first book so much. So if you don't already know, this is the second book to the Where Dreams Descend duology, House of Cards, something like that. I don't know, but it's a sequel to Where Dreams Descend, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really, really like that book. I even mentioned it on my best books of 2021, 5th or 6th place, really. Here's the thing. So this duology is essentially a play on mirrors. So you're in this magical world, and it's a very mysterious magical world, and that's one of the many reasons that I love the first book. But this is essentially a play on mirrors. So in the second book, we are in an opposite world as the first book. That's not really a spoiler per se, it's so different than the first book is what I'm trying to get at. And with that, what has happened is everything good about the first book, everything I loved, is just completely gone, it's completely lost. I had this recently happen with Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber as well. As most of you know, if you watched that really long vlog where I just rant the entire time and get really pissed off. So obviously this really hurt me even more because I just went through the same thing before this. So I actually gave this 1 out of 5 stars. I never give books 1 star, okay? A book has to be really, really just unenjoyable for me. This is a 500-page book. The only part of this book I enjoyed is like this right here, is the 4-page epilogue, because it was the one time where it felt like the first book. If you do read the acknowledgments at the end, the author talks about writing this during the pandemic, where her mental health wasn't the best, and it's definitely reflected in the book. So yeah, I totally understand. I know of that and I understand that, in case anyone wants to mention that as well, because it's a very known thing. I think there was a big thing about the author feeling pressured to post on social media as an author, to get people to read her book and stuff, and social media was a bad mental place for her as well during that time, which I totally can relate to. Yeah, I recently I'm not active on Twitter anymore because of that. I've completely lost my connection and love for Twitter, and I just feel like I've grown out of it, to be honest. So if you do have me on my bookish Twitter, just know I'm active in other places, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, obviously, if you want to see any updates. Goodreads is like the best update platform platform for my reading updates. I don't want to be too detailed about this since it is a sequel. I feel really bad, if I'm being completely honest, I feel bad for recommending the first book so much, because I just feel like people will start this duology because of me and then they'll end it feeling the way that I feel. Unfortunately, I no longer recommend reading Where Dreams Descend. I don't recommend this duology just because, to put it bluntly, this book was torturous. It's not the same world, so you get introduced to this world and these characters that are just like amazing and unique and fantastic, and there's just so many good things about the first book, and to end it where everything is gone and you don't get to enter that world again is what I'm saying. So when you finish that first book, like, it's just over. It's really disappointing, unfortunately. These books are absolutely beautiful too, like such gorgeous books. You know, we build up the main couple, this great love interest in the first book, and then he actually doesn't enter until about, I'd say 70% through this book is when the love interest enters. So they are separated. You know, that wasn't the only important thing about the book. You know, we were just introduced to this world that we then did not enter. There's so many mysteries with the world that we just couldn't uncover. And my favorite part is the main character. Like, she's just so great, and she was just completely rewritten. There's a lot of feminism aspects or feminist aspects in the first book that weren't there. You know, the first book, I say probably 12 quotes that I've featured in several places. I did not say one quote in this. The writing is just so different. The characters are also different. All of the new characters that are introduced are just the worst. Like, Vane was, I skimmed so much of this book. Like, I just wanted it to be over. It's the most disappointing for me because this was my fantasy read that I chose. For some reason, I can't read fantasy back to back anymore. I think it just takes too much brain power. Like, when I am watching a TV show, I don't want to think about the TV show. And I'm finding the same thing happening with reading ever since, you know, like COVID and since 2020, is I just don't want, like, when it's relaxation time and me time and like entertainment time, like, I don't want to use so much brain power, because other parts of my day I'm using all my brain power. So yeah, unfortunately I can't read a lot of fantasies, and this is what I picked up just because it had just came out and I wanted to know what happened with those characters. And it just really sucks because now I don't want to read fantasy, and there's so many fantasy books I want to read in general that again will have to wait, and now it's starting to get nice out, and I don't read fantasy when it's nice out. Usually like fall and winter is when I read fantasy. So unfortunately this book kind of took that spot from other potentially great books. So for me as a reader, yeah, just really disappointing. I'm not going to touch on it anymore. If you want an in-depth review, please look at my Goodreads review, because I go over each point to why I loved the first book so much and what was so great about the first book, and then the comparison for this book, you know, what was lost, what was different, all of that. And like I said, it's a play on mirrors. Our main character is a magician. Ironically, she does not have magic in the second book, so you even lose all the magic. So I don't care if it's a play on mirrors, to be honest. It's just not what I signed up for. Sorry. And those are all the books that I read recently. I know it's only 4 and we've probably been here a minute, so I wanted to go over what I'm reading right now. So I just started Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemor. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm only a few chapters in, I would say part 2 is. But it's definitely like, it's got my attention so far. I was recommended this by Jordan from, I think her channel is called Sorry Book Solid, or Jordan Book Solid. And she recommended this for fans of The Midnight Library, which you all know is my favorite book of 2021. Love that book so much. And there's definitely a lot of like, I can see why it was recommended. The biggest difference I think though is I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this book, whereas The Midnight Library can be quite like all-consuming and emotional and almost depressing. It's like going through this big therapy experience, you know what I mean? But this is going to be more fun, I think. So basically Una lives her life out of order. So every year she jumps, she time travels to a different age within her body. So the very first time she time jumps, she goes from 18 to 55, and then she'll time jump again to a different part of her life. And so Yeah, it's just gonna be super interesting. There's already been a play on like social media and technology and people dying when she like jumps to the future and stuff like that. I just feel like there's gonna be a lot of different aspects to it. I hope it does get philosophical like the Midnight Library does. That's my hope. I'm not there yet, obviously, since I just started, but yeah. So far, so good. I'm also reading The Summer It Happened, or It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, I'm pretty sure. Is it Tessa? Ugh, now I have to look it up. It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, yeah. So I was recommended this by someone that said it was one of their favorite books of 2021, but they are a romance reader. I knew that going in. Honestly, I just needed a quick audiobook, and I remember they said it was their favorite romance book of the year, so I just started listening to it. I'm only probably like 20% through it, like a fifth of the way through it, and it's okay. It honestly has the exact same setup, like the same premise, plot, characters as Simple Wild, which, as you know, I did not enjoy that book at all, so my first impression of it isn't good. But yeah, like I said, usually with these quick romance audiobooks, I don't expect anything crazy anyways. So yeah, I'll let you know what I think, but so far, not so good. But for Una Out of Order, I'm really enjoying this one so far. I think it's a really good book for this time of year, like the springtime, because you're coming out of winter. It's a good like transition book, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, that is all for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please like this video. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so if you feel like it. I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in my next one.